Practically everybody in the world is coming to the fair. The Wilson family is driving in from out west. Everyone is coming to the New York World's Fair. They're coming from the four corners of the earth and from Five Corners, Idaho. They come down from New Athens, Maine, and from Athens, Greece, and from Tokyo, and Kokomo, and Rome, down from Frisco and down from Troy, from Hamburg, from Nineveh, from Aurora, Illinois. Troop 295 from the Bronx. And the traveling teachers from Kansas, Miss Abbott and Mrs. Todd. And the Wilsons got here at last. The Wilsons take the motor train for an overall view of the fairgrounds. There is the symbol of the fair, the great Unisphere. Mr. and Mrs. Chandra, they're here from India. Chandra is an engineer. Here's something special, a new structural principle. He'll come back later for a closer look. Here's a pavilion with a musical spectacle. Here's a salute to the children of the world. A suspended theater with a film on the joy of living. A show where the audience revolves around the stage. Stories of the States. Places to stroll and places to rest. An old European town to wander in. Each building is an experience just to see, filled with tributes to the nations, their arts, industry, and science. the Chandras find a machine that playfully demonstrates the law of averages. Here's a new way to go to a show. The whole grandstand is lifted up into the theater. The teachers find new ways of presenting complex ideas to their students. Soap bubbles reveal the beauty of geometry. Troop 295 is doing the fair in an organized way. Miss Abbott and Mrs. Todd are going into a show on the history of communication, from Tom-Tom to Telstar. The Wilsons set off to explore the pavilions. Ice cream. So they lost the troop. The Wilsons enter a pavilion with a roof like a stained glass rose window. Some places make you happy just to be in them. An elevator goes up the highest tower at the fair. Troop lost again. Intensify the search, men. The teachers have lunch at the Chinese pavilion. There is a world of travel. The Chandras go to Spain. The teachers will bring back to their classes snapshots of the Far East and stories of many lands. Miss Abbott and Mrs. Todd visit Indonesia. Country after country displays its treasures. The Pietà of Michelangelo. For the Japanese, the art of drinking tea is almost a religious ritual. It's only a short walk from Asia to Africa. And here's a late arrival coming to the fair in his own way. He finds the world of the Old West. So at last, the Tenderfeet rejoin Troop 295 from the Bronx. The Wilson kids need a rest, and so do their parents. So they leave them in a nursery for a while. By chance, the Wilsons and the Chandras meet and join up for sightseeing. The Wilsons have never known anyone from the opposite side of the earth before. They decide to see another show together. Wilsons have picked up their children from the nursery. They go exploring a Belgian village. At dusk, a new fair comes to life.
Hello, everybody. Although my pose may in some small way resemble that wonder of the ancient world, the Colossus of Rhodes, actually, I'm Lowell Thomas, standing in front of what will soon be one of the wonders of the modern world. This is the theme symbol of the New York World's Fair, the Unisphere, built by United States Steel. And here will be the biggest, most fascinating show ever created by man. 650 acres and over 200 exhibitors. The finest in industry, the arts, culture, and entertainment from all over the world. Let's take a look at the fair and what there'll be to see. At the Port of New York, New Jersey exhibit building, there'll be a restaurant, movies in the round, and a heliport, offering flights direct from New York City to the fair. Here, making the first official landing, is the governor of the state of New York, Nelson A. Rockefeller, New Jersey Governor Richard Hughes, and other distinguished guests. There'll be other attractions in the transportation area. At General Motors, take an auto ride into the future. Then into a Walt Disney Fantasyland by Ford. Drive in Mobile's Economy Run. See exhibits in science, moon travel, and Sinclair's dinosaurs. Then lunch in Greyhound's Restaurant of the Future, all in the transportation area of the New York World's Fair. I'm sitting here in the World's Fair Amphitheater, where you'll enjoy a spectacular stage and water show. This is the Lake Amusement Area, presenting the finest in entertainment. See Columbus's Santa Maria, a wax museum, and dine on Chinese specialties. Ride AMF's exciting monorail. There'll be shows galore. The circus, the Texas Music Hall, at nearby Jones Beach, around the world in 80 days. And when night falls, a lovely fountain show. The crack of a baseball bat, the cry, Homer, from 55,000 voices here in the William A. Shea Stadium next to the World's Fair. The fair's sports program is exciting. In the stadium, the Mets home games and the All-Star baseball game. Many of the 1964 Olympic trials will be held at the fair, here in the arena and in the pavilion. At the time of the 1939 World's Fair, I reported from this exact spot. In fact, did my broadcast here. In the days when nylon, plastics, and television were the sensation. But today, the industrial giants of the world are preparing a mighty new spectacle here. Here where steel is taking on the shape of things to come. In IBM's theater, you'll thrill to a very special abstract film. Johnson's Wax has a suspended theater. Here, Electric Power and Light's Tower of Light. You'll see RCA's TV broadcast in color. The Bell System Story of Communications. and a new time capsule by Westinghouse. There'll be 2 exhibits by Walt Disney. At General Electric, his amazing animated figures. And here, Pepsi-Cola's tribute to UNICEF. You'll see fascinating exhibits of photography by Eastman Kodak, of chemistry by DuPont, of automation by National Cash Register, and of gas by the gas industry. Exhibits for your home, too, at the Better Living Pavilion. Formica's World's Fair House, the Pavilion of American Interiors, and the House of Good Taste. And if delicious food and drink is your dish, be merry at Rheingold's Little Old New York or at the world's largest beer bar by Schaefer. Dine on 7-Up's International Sandwiches or quench your thirst in Coca-Cola's World of Refreshment. Visit Travelers Insurance Triumph of Man, the Boy Scouts, and Equitable Life's wonderful Demograph. By this time, if you're happy but tired, take a unique pause in Scott Paper's lovely park or in Simmons' Scientific Indoor Rest Area. The exciting new world of industry at the New York World's Fair. As some of you know, I have spent much of my life roaming this planet in search of the unusual, the interesting, the exotic. But you, right here in the international area, can visit more than 45 countries. In Hong Kong, Oriental specialties. A restaurant from Switzerland and the Swiss Sky Ride. See Indonesia's Balinese dancers and the handicrafts of Mexico. Pakistan dramatizes her past, and Austria her famous mountains. Sweden her creativity. And in a traditional motif, the Republic of China. From Africa, the new nation of Sierra Leone. India's theme is Progress in Democracy. The Hall of Free Enterprise. Japanese exhibits by government and by industry. From the Caribbean, the rhythms of Calypso. From Argentina, beef prepared in the style of the Pampas. And from Spain, flamenco dancing, paintings, and a wine cave. And at the International Plaza, many other nations and foreign organizations will be represented. Nations from around the globe pledged to a theme of common understanding. The central theme of the fair, Peace Through Understanding, will gain in depth and perspective through impressive religious and cultural exhibits and events. The Protestant Pavilion. The Mormon Pavilion. The Christian Science Pavilion. The Billy Graham Pavilion. The Vatican will exhibit Michelangelo's masterpiece, the Pietà, his famed sculpture of Mary holding the crucified Christ. Three former presidents are proud to serve as chairman for the fair. Herbert Hoover, Dwight D. Eisenhower, Harry S. Truman. And here on this 4.5-acre site is rising the magnificent Federal Building. Its theme, Challenge to Greatness. Here will be exhibit halls, a theater, and tributes to our American heritage. At the groundbreaking ceremony, our late President, John F. Kennedy, met Robert Moses, president of the fair.
We have roamed these United States and literally combed the globe for pavilions and exhibits which will reflect the achievements of all men in industry, culture, the arts, and harmless entertainment. We confidently expect more than 70 million visitors to an unforgettable pageant.
Then the President.
I want the people of the world to visit this fair and to come to the American exhibit, the exhibit of the United States, and see what we've accomplished through a system of freedom.
And many of our states will exhibit. New York State will feature the tent of tomorrow. New York City's exhibit, a scale model of the entire New York metropolitan area in astonishing detail. Dick Button's Ice Travaganza with Olympic skating champions. By Meadow Lake, Hawaiian food specialties. Florida will have a live porpoise show. Missouri's Alan Shepard was first in space. Both New Jersey and New York will celebrate their 300th anniversary. The New England states, the Village Green and Country Store. West Virginia, the land of relaxation. And Maryland will dramatize the Star-Spangled Banner. Our own United States of America at the New York World's Fair. This, then, will be the New York World's Fair. Everywhere construction goes on so rapidly, in fact, that what you see here is already ancient history. It's so close to opening day that tickets are already on sale all over the country. And so plans and preparations race ahead for the opening of the gates to the New York World's Fair. And you'll be one of the 70 million, perhaps 80 million visitors to see this, one of the most spectacular shows of all time. And now, until April 22nd, 1964, so long.
(1939), the New York World's Fair. 1904, the St. Louis Fair. 1889, the Paris International Exposition. From earliest times, markets and fairs have been a gathering place where men came not only to trade, but to exchange ideas. As civilizations grew, as communications improved between nations, peoples of the world looked for new ways to display their industrial and cultural accomplishments. With the coming of the Industrial Revolution, the Industrial Fair was born. London, 1851. Over this world of squatting stones and twisting streets arose a strange and unbelievable structure, the Crystal Palace. It was built for and became the symbol of the London Exposition of 1851, the first World's Fair. With each succeeding fair, people came from greater distances. Fair buildings introduced new materials and daring engineering and architectural concepts. Timekeepers of progress. In 1889, there arose over Paris the theme symbol of the Paris International Exposition, the Eiffel Tower. Designed by the greatest engineer of his time, Gustave Eiffel. Magician in iron, he was called. The great tower was bold enough to be controversial. A masterpiece of structural engineering, it remained a celebrated landmark, a symbol of world's fairs everywhere. Then, one day in March 1963, notables of both France and the United States gathered at Flushing Meadows, New York, for the beginning of construction of Unisphere, theme symbol for a new World's Fair. Robert Moses, president of the World's Fair Corporation.
We looked high and low for a challenging symbol for the New York World's Fair of 1964 and 1965. It had to be of the space age. It had to reflect the interdependence of men on the planet Earth. And it had to emphasize their achievements and aspirations. It had to be the cynosure for all visitors, dominating Flushing Meadow and built to remain as a permanent feature of the park, reminding succeeding generations of a pageant of surpassing interest and significance. What stronger, more durable, and more appropriate metal in the record of American constructive accomplishments could be thought of than stainless steel? And what builder more imaginative and competent than the United States Steel Corporation?
In most uncooperative March weather, René Legrand-Eiffel, grandson of the creator of the Eiffel Tower, signaled the start of construction of Unisphere. The first member to go into place was one section of the USS Core 10 steel pedestal. Unisphere, the largest representation of our globe ever attempted. Unisphere, the largest stainless steel structure yet built. Stainless steel. Why? Because it is to become a permanent landmark, Unisphere must be virtually maintenance-free, yet remain enduringly beautiful. Stainless steel alone could do the job. Decoratively used for years by architect and designer, it was easy to suggest stainless steel's strength and beauty for a structure so large. Here's what our engineers went to work on. Assignment. For purposes of monumental beauty only, complete a feasible design for a stainless steel structure as high as a 12-story building. If Unisphere were to be harmonious when viewed from any angle, no diagonal bracing could be used between parallels and meridians. Take away such bracing, and conventional structural members normally get heavier and bulkier. But each structural member of Unisphere must appear light and attractive. Perched atop a sculptured base, which must suggest lightness and grace, Unisphere would have to withstand the enormous and changing forces of the wind, as well as its own weight. The continents and islands would act like sails, and wind pressure could exert forces nearly equal to the weight of the entire structure. Because Unisphere is open and its land areas irregular in size and position, the wind blows on either the outside or the inside, the front of a continent or its back. No past experience was available to calculate the wind forces because no one had ever built a Unisphere before, or anything like it. To meet this phase of the challenge, exhaustive wind tunnel tests were conducted at the University of Maryland. From these aerodynamic tests came the data that made design analysis possible. The mathematics of analysis posed its own peculiar challenge. Unisphere had to be completed by April 1964. High-speed computers were used to solve the thousands of problems that would have taken years if attempted manually. In the design of this large bridge, for instance, it was necessary to solve only 35 simultaneous equations. In Unisphere, one problem alone required a solution of 670 simultaneous equations. Design analyzed and approved, fabrication and construction could begin. Thousands of different pieces had to be cut, formed, assembled, and welded. Box girders, tubes, beams, channels, angles. Special automatic and manual welding methods were employed. An upper meridian section is welded. The South Pole is assembled. Land areas were fabricated and assembled on this turtle-shaped fitting table, which duplicated the exact curvature of Unisphere. Conformed to United States Army Engineering Corps contour maps, mountains and valleys are shown in exaggerated relief in order to achieve effective visualization of elevation. Wrapped to protect the stainless beauty, sections were shipped by rail and highway to Unisphere's site. Just ahead of the construction of the pedestal, 30 USS T-1 steel anchor bolts are set and the concrete base poured around them. First structural member to go into place is the South Pole. Next, one of Unisphere's largest members, a lower meridian, is carefully fitted into the South Pole and laid across the pedestal. Actually welded girders, the lower meridians will support the entire structure. Right at the site, many of the members are field welded into sub-assemblies nicknamed orange peel sections. To provide support and access, a temporary mast is placed along Unisphere's polar axis. When the structure is complete, Unisphere will be self-supporting and the mast removed. The southern hemisphere, like a giant bowl, is completed in 83 days. Becomes a world of stainless steel when the last flag-topped section is set in place. Now, addition of the land areas can begin. Delicate work. No job for windy days, though, because the sections act like big kites if not securely held. continents and islands in place, it remains only to raise the 3 orbit rings. Weighing 3 tons each, the orbit rings are field welded into a continuous single piece 450 feet around. Special care is taken to protect the polished surface. To prevent bending, each orbit ring is lifted by 4 cranes, each attached at 3 points. An intricate communication plan and network links all hands. Precision teamwork means that the orbit rings rise slowly and evenly. About 50 stainless steel guy wires connect each ring to Unisphere, just as spokes tie a bicycle wheel rim to its axle. Strong and light, they are so difficult to see that the rings seem to float in space. Only 162 days after construction was begun, Unisphere is complete. Its challenge successfully met. Crystal Palace, Eiffel Tower, Trilon and Perisphere. Unisphere now joins these and the other memorable timekeepers of progress. A spectacular piece of open stainless steel sculpture, Unisphere is dedicated to man's aspirations towards peace through mutual understanding and symbolizes his achievements in an expanding universe.